Welcome to the Jaybe show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this beautiful Sunday. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And my apologies for the tardiness. A couple things got in the way before starting. So my apologies to all of you for starting a little bit behind. But just to let you guys know that I also stream on Thursdays for the Sabby and Jaybe show, as well as on Sundays for the Jaybe show. You guys can find me on my channel, on the Jaybe Font channel, on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So good to see all of you guys here. If you guys have not already, you guys can also join our mailing list for our Substack at revolutionaryblackout.substack.com. And if you guys would like to email us and get in contact with us, you can go to revolutionaryblackout@outlook.com for any encouraging words or any type of news that you find worthy to be reported on. So thank you very much for that. So good to see all of you guys joining me here today. Look, we got a couple of shows to come to talk about a couple of stories, as well as I need to make an address. So I also have to do that as well. But I just wanted to, get into this because there's a lot of talk right now and people are lashing out. And as people lash out, they tend to behave in not so rational ways. So we'll be getting to that in a little bit later in the show. But with that being said, going to say a couple of hellos to people who may be in the chat. Good to see everybody that's watching on YouTube, Rumble, and Rockfin. We also have Sean coming in saying currently watching from the San Francisco area on our way to Six Flags. Hope you guys have yourself a great time out there. It is a beautiful day, at least, here in Florida. It just rained. It's about to clear up, so it's going to be a beautiful day out here. So good to see all of you here. So what are we going to be talking about today? So we're going to have a couple of stories that we're going to be getting into. I think it is also worthy of us to pay attention to. So we have these stories here. So we're going to be talking about later boomer homelessness crisis. We're talking about that because a lot of times we're not talking about our older folks. But first, what I want to talk about today is disabled students left behind. And this is a story out here in Florida. A lot of people are leaving those of us who may be disabled or differently able out to dry. And so we're going to be getting into that right now. So there are many people in this state and many people throughout this country who deal with having a family member who might have a disability. And sometimes it's a physical disability, sometimes it's an intellectual disability, or sometimes it's both. And in the system that we live in, it is already challenging to deal with as it is. Unfortunately, because of the system that we live in, your value is seen at what you can or cannot produce. And so because of that, people who don't produce as much as the average person does within a capitalist system, they are deemed less worthy, even though a life is a life. And so because of this, then people who may have a family member that may suffer from an intellectual, physical disability, or both, are typically overlooked. They are not regarded as important because in their eyes, they do not contribute as much to society in their eyes. And so I think this is a very important topic to get into because they do not get paid attention to as much as they should. Their voices are not amplified as much. You may have different people who have these different conditions, ailments, disabilities, different abilities. And they are invisible until we see them, maybe at an event, maybe at an outing, at a family gathering, something. And then we finally pay attention. But day to day, we don't. I'm going to give you a little story before we begin and why I'm talking about this. So, in my high school years, I was recruited to go to a magnet high school so that I can pursue a trade and then go into that field. And then once I'm done learning that trade, I can go straight into the industry without even having to go into college. And that was the more economically viable path for me because I didn't want to end up with student debt like my mother did. And so that's what I did. And this was this small high school. Our student body was somewhere around 210 to 220 students. That's the entire student body. And it was only juniors and seniors in that school. It was called Career Academy High School. And the high school itself was located in a technical vocational school here in Orlando. And so I had my four basic subjects. You know, I had my math subject, my science, my history, and in English. And then my electives were the trade that I was going into, which was for me was commercial foods and culinary arts. But in doing so, because I needed transportation to get to and from class, the bus that we would take wouldn't be a regular school bus due to, budgeting issues with the school board. So instead, it would be a two-stop. So we would get picked up along with the students that were disabled at the local high school. So the students that were disabled, and a lot of time they would be physically and or intellectually disabled, we would pick them up as well. And so we would be on the same bus as them. We would get dropped off at our magnet high school, and then they would get dropped off at the regular public school. So we would daily see our fellow students from another school who are disabled. And so being around them, it humanizes them, and you don't see them just as an afterthought. You don't see them as an other. One of those students, I'm not going to say his name because for privacy reasons, went to the same church as I did. And so I knew him before I knew the rest of his family. Sweet kid, sweet kid. Well, he's a grown man now. We're basically the same age. But he has an intellectual disability. And so because of that, I got to see the human side of him. And that's important, that we see ourselves in other people, right? Including those who may have physical and or intellectual disabilities within our own country. And it's for this very reason why there's a sense of outrage with the story. And so this is why I want to talk about this. Because this isn't just a moral issue, this is also a class issue that we need to talk about. So I want to get into this story here. And I hope that you stick around for this because I think it is that important. Here we go. This is a story that says Florida will phase out certificates of completion for students with disabilities. Now, this came out just a few days ago. Let's get into this. And this is local to the state of Florida, But this can also happen to other states. So goes Florida, can go and then replace the state with Louisiana, Alabama, South Carolina, Arizona. It can go to Pennsylvania. It can go to Nebraska. It can go to Illinois. Just name a state. So let's read and get into this. So the Florida Board of Education voted to sunset certificates of completion for students with disabilities who attend K through 12 schools in the state. These certificates were awarded to students who couldn't complete the coursework needed for a diploma. Under new Florida law, HB 1105, and the board's vote, students with disabilities will no longer be able to get a certificate of completion at the end of their school career starting this year. Students with severe disabilities who can't earn a standard high school diploma will leave school without any formal recognition upon graduation. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little overly sensitive. But because their threshold of learning is lower than those of us who are average students, then shouldn't the threshold to graduate also be lower? And is it really a effort issue? Is it an issue of they just don't want to? Or is it an issue that their threshold is lower, so therefore we refuse to meet the needs of those at a lower threshold cognitively? And so this has bigger implications, because just from the moral aspect, it's like, okay, they were able to complete this. They were able to not complete this coursework. But at the same time, who are you comparing them to? Because not everybody's at the same level, even just in average classes. And so what are we doing for those students too? Let's continue. It says Amy Van Bergen ran the Down Syndrome Association of Central Florida and is also the mom of a son with disabilities. She said her son, Wills, wouldn't have been able to get the 2 jobs he works at a law office without his certificate, and she's worried for other students like him. People with disabilities already have a higher rate of unemployment and a lower rate of job placement after school. Now, without a certificate of completion, securing employment could be even harder. So now we get into the economic aspect of this issue. Because now that they can no longer get a certificate of completion, some of these students who may have an intellectual disability, there are varying levels of intellectual disability. It's not just one set stagnant level. Some may have a slight intellectual disability, but because they have that slight intellectual disability, it doesn't mean they still can't work. It doesn't mean that they still can't produce and provide for themselves in an economic way. And the problem is now that you're taking that certificate of completion away from them, now you're going to subject them even further to a life of deeper poverty and unemployment. And so then once they get to that, once they get to homelessness, then what are you going to do? Because their crime is that they have an intellectual disability and you didn't want to give them a certificate of completion. So now, because you're phasing out that certification, now employers are not going to want to hire them. And it's already hard enough, because an employer will look at a certificate of completion against a diploma, and of course they're going to pick the diploma. But now we're even in a state of economic contention where now you look at college students. Students with master's degrees are having a hard time finding a job now. So now you're making it even harder for the most disenfranchised among us. And the question is, if we are truly for the working class, does it mean all the working class, including ones that may have some intellectual disabilities or may have some physical disabilities? Are we for the true, all the working class, or are we just for the ones who seem normal? See, this is what pisses me off about some people on the left that are like, oh, just be normal. What does that mean to you? What does it mean to be normal? What does it mean? Does it mean to be within the confines of certain ideas pushed on us by a capitalist system? Because we have to be seen as productive according to them, when in reality, if it's not hurting nobody, why we need to be normal? If it's not hurting nobody, if it's not disenfranchising anybody. That's the question I ask. Let's continue on. It says without a certificate, they're potentially going to lose eligibility to all sorts of opportunities after high school, whether that's even taking a college placement test or pursuing developmental or vocational programs. Van Bergen says she's worried students with disabilities who can't earn a standard diploma and who now won't be able to earn a certificate of completion could be ineligible to participate in graduation ceremonies like other kids. Ultimately, she says this could take away some of the incentives these students have to complete school at all. Because it's like, well, if you can't even earn a diploma, well, and it's really just what it does, it places everybody on the same plane when not everybody cognitively is on the same plane. That's just like when somebody says, oh, you should learn to code. Some of us may not have the same capacity or bandwidth for learning to code as others, because some of us may be stronger in other areas that might be less concrete. And that's okay, because the human brain varies in different degrees. There is not one specific type of intelligence. And this is one of the biggest issues. Some people think that intelligence is just this one specific standard. There are multiple different kinds of intelligence. And I mean this in a way of praising, and I hope it doesn't come off. I don't mean it to be backhanded or anything. But, and he's been honest about this before. Comrade on RBN, Rome, has admitted that he didn't finish high school. Yet this is one of the smartest brothers I know. Because the problem is the system did not acclimate to the way he learned. It expects students to acclimate to the system instead of the system acclimating to the students. So this is why you have a lot of kids in high school that go, man, school just ain't for me. And yet, they are brilliant, but it may be brilliant in just different ways. But we have to put them in this specific box. And then we say, if you don't fit within this box, you are not worthy. You are not human enough for us to regard. And then what happens? Because they don't get that diploma, and now because they don't get the certificate of completion, well, guess what? If you're not worthy enough for school, then you're not worthy enough for employment, which subjects them even further to economic disparity. And this is even higher when you go to different groups like Black and brown people, right? Because white supremacy is still a thing. And so the problem is that we have a system where they try to fit everybody into this neat little box. And the school system at its present form is more focused on obedience and conformity rather than mindfulness and critical thinking. It's really great for people who can just retain information and then just spit it back out. But what about the people who analyze things in their head and go, wait a minute, this ain't right, that ain't right, that ain't right, this doesn't make sense. How does this make sense? How is this congruent? How do these converge? And then because you don't go according to the regiment or the curriculum that the school wants you to, then, oh, well, you're too much of a radical. You have to go. No, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. You can go and get your GED maybe in a couple of years, but outside of that, no, you're not good enough. And this is part of education system that is built with a capitalist model. I am all for public education. This is why the system needs to change in order to make public education public education. Public education isn't public education in this system. Public education is capitalist education because they want you to be good little workers. That's it. And now the people who can't measure up to what they want to be good little workers that conform to the capitalist mode of production, well, guess what? If you can't reach that right where we need you, then guess what? Instead of, what's the word I want to use? Instead of tailoring it to, okay, we know you can't reach to this part, but for your category, can you reach to this part? Instead of doing that, they just throw you out completely. And they say you're no longer worthy. And it's sick. It's a sick system. Because they are people too. They are lives. I can't tell you how many people who I met who dropped out of high school who are brilliant. Like, do me a favor, after the stream, go to the RBN Roundtable and listen to Rome's analysis about geopolitics. He has a better analysis than me, and I finished high school. This is the problem with the education system that we have, is that it doesn't conform to the way kids learn. We all do not have the same type of brains. Look at people who are on the spectrum, who may be neurodivergent. They may even be nonverbal, but they can figure things out way faster than the rest of us can. But that's just because their brain is different. But you know what's interesting about that? The capitalists, if they can't utilize it to make profit off of, then they are not going to see that person as worthy. That's the problem. And the school system is under the purview and under the oversight of who? The government. And who is running our government? It ain't us. It's the corporate parasites, the parasite class. And they're the ones that run our school governments. Our school systems under our government. And so some of your kids are seen as not worthy. This was brought up by Amanda Seales during her debate with Black conservatives. And yes, this is true. They will actually do tests, school standardized tests for kids in the 3rd grade, and they use those test scores to judge how many beds and how many cells that they will need for prisons in order to know, okay, we got this many kids that are below this level. Guess what? They're going to be most likely to end up in our prison. So guess what? We know that we're going to be making money off of those kids. We're going to be incarcerating them. And that's the sick part of the system. All right, let's continue on. It says the whole disillusion of certificates of completion absolutely disproportionately harms students with disabilities. So rather than helping bridge that educational disparity gap, it is only going to widen it. Why on earth should these students attend school? The Florida Department of Education says the focus will now be on alternate pathways to completing high school diploma, and this change is needed to ensure students receive appropriate support and recognition for their achievements. The change is an outlier in legislative session that otherwise championed the rights of students and people with disabilities. Senate President Ben Albritton made increasing the support and services available to people with disabilities the focus of the last session. Though laws passed last session, Governor Ron DeSantis and a Republican majority legislator not only increased early detection and intervention for students who have autism, but also created micro-credential for teachers who work with students on the spectrum. Now, here's one thing I will agree with, right? Increasing early detection and intervention for students who have autism and create micro-credential for teachers who work with students on the spectrum. Basically, as long as you are trying to acclimate so that they can actually learn while still embracing the different type of mind that they have, okay, right? But some people want to just cart them off into an institution or get them away, right? Which is essentially what, some people want to do. And so it's like, is there a better thing? And part of me thinks that it would be better instead to give them that certificate of completion, and on top of that, find the different ways that they learn and recondition the school system to acclimate to that. I'm blanking on the name of the talk, but there was this educator that basically talked. It was Sir Ken Robinson. And it was, oh my gosh, I almost had it. But basically, he was speaking about when it comes to public education, we're going to watch it. We're going to watch it because I think it's that important. I should have had it primed up, but I just thought about it just until now. But let's take a look at this. Let's see. No. Changing education paradigms. That's what it's called. Now, this came out 14 years ago. I hope that people get a lot out of this, but this actually goes into what I was trying to explain, and he does it a lot more succinctly than I ever can. So I will also link this in the chat for you guys, but I think this is absolutely brilliant, and I agree with him on this. So let's go. Oh, hang on. Sound up.
Every country on earth at the moment is reforming public education. There are two reasons for it. The first of them is economic. People are trying to work out, how do we educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century? How do we do that? Given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week, as the recent turmoil is demonstrating. How do we do that? The second, though, is cultural. Every country on earth is trying to figure out, how do we educate our children so they have a sense of cultural identity and so that we can pass on the cultural genes of our communities while being part of the process of globalization? How do we square that circle? The problem is they're trying to meet the future by doing what they did in the past. And on the way, they're alienating millions of kids who don't see any purpose in going to school. When we went to school, we were kept there with a story, which was if you worked hard and did well and got a college degree, you would have a job.
Boom. That's also another thing. Like, we were millennials. Come to the front, millennials. Because that's what we were told. Remember in the movie Accepted? It was with Justin Long. His dad said, if you want a good life, if you want a job, you go to college. If you want to be seen as basically valuable to society, you go to college, right? And he was resisting that, right? Because not everybody, college isn't for everybody, right? But that's basically what we were taught. And now, as we can see, even people with master's degrees are having a hard time even finding a job in a field where, number one, they're well overqualified for. And that's one of the flaws of the capitalist system. Let's continue.
Our kids don't believe that. And they're right not to, by the way. You're better having a degree than not, but it's not a guarantee anymore. And particularly not if the route to it marginalizes most of the things that you think are important about yourself. Some people say we have to raise standards as if this is a breakthrough. Like, really, yes, we should. Why would you lower them? I haven't come across an argument that persuades me of lowering them. But raising them, of course we should raise them. The problem is that the current system of education was designed and conceived and structured for a different age. Mm-hmm. It was conceived in the intellectual culture of the Enlightenment and in the economic circumstances of the Industrial Revolution. Before the middle of the 19th century, there were no systems of public education. Not really. I mean, you could get educated by Jesuits, if you had the money. But public education, paid for from taxation, compulsory to everybody and free at the point of delivery, that was a revolutionary idea. And many people objected to it. They said it's not possible for many street kids, working class children, to benefit from public education. They're incapable of learning to read and write, and why are we spending time on this? So there's also built into it a whole series of assumptions about social structure and capacity.
So it's talking about class, right? Based on your class, you're either worthy of education or not. And I feel this coming back up again in certain ways, that some of us are being seen as worthy of education, whereas some of us are not seen as worthy. See what I mean? And so it's really a dehumanization. And it's part of this anti-intellectual sphere that we're having, right? And the people who typically push the anti-intellectualism are people who went to college, went to universities. But they want people to be anti-intellectual so that they can keep it amongst themselves. So then they can say, well, I got an education, so I'm worthy. And they'll do this, And it's not to say that going to college or anything like that makes you better. It should be open to everybody without a barrier. And if they wish, they can go through that formal process, or if they want to do it through an informal process, it could be available to them through free education areas like a public library. I also think that I think education should be free overall, because if people have access to it, then they can actually learn more, which is part of why, it's so important that we have this internet age, because it actually is opening a lot of avenues towards people now having more knowledge at their fingertips. The only problem is there's some misinformation and disinformation that's also among that as well. And so some people may pick up on the disinformation and misinformation and think they take that as actual fact. And that's part of the issue too. But I think education really should be free for everybody. Let's continue.
Driven by an economic imperative of the time, but running right through it was an intellectual model of the mind, which was essentially the Enlightenment view of intelligence. That real intelligence consists in the capacity for a certain type of deductive reasoning and a knowledge of the classics originally, what we come to think of as academic ability. And this is deep in the gene pool of public education, that there are really two types of people, academic and non-academic, smart people and non-smart people. And the consequence of that is that many brilliant people think they're not, because they've been judged against this particular view of the mind.
Oh, baby, that's where it is. And the problem is that some people, like for instance, you guys remember, have you guys ever seen the movie Good Will Hunting? Great movie. Matt Damon, Robin Williams, Ben Affleck. Is it Bill Skarsgård or Alexander Skarsgård? I forget, but I know it's one of them. It's a Mini Driver. There's a lot of people in that movie that are really famous now. But basically, it talks about Will Hunting is basically a kid that's from a working class background. I would argue working poor. And he is brilliant mathematician. But at the same time, he can't get out of his own way. But he's a brilliant mathematician. But he also works at working class jobs. And so despite him being brilliant, people will look down on him, seeing him, working on a moving truck, or see him working as a barista or something like that. And they will look down on him, not thinking that he's that smart. When in reality, he can run circles around the people in these universities. And so the thing is, like, just because somebody has a certain occupation or a certain manner of speaking doesn't mean that they're not intelligent. This is why I talk about there's multiple different types of intelligence. The problem is that we box people into what we deem as intelligence. All right, let's continue.
So we have twin pillars, economic and intellectual. And my view is that this model has caused chaos in many people's lives. It's been great for some. There have been people who have benefited wonderfully from it. But most people have not. Mm-hmm. Instead, they suffer this. This is the modern epidemic, and it's as misplaced and it's as fictitious. This is the plague of ADHD. Now, this is a map of the incidence of ADHD in America, or prescriptions for ADHD. Don't mistake me here. I don't mean to say there is no such thing as attention deficit disorder. I'm not qualified to say if there is such a thing. I know that a great majority of psychologists and pediatricians think there is such a thing, but it's still a matter of debate. What I do know for a fact is it's not an epidemic. These kids are being medicated as routinely as we had our tonsils taken out, and on the same whimsical basis and for the same reason, medical fashion. Our children are living in the most intensely stimulating period in the history of the earth. They're being besieged with information and calls for their attention from every platform, computers, from iPhones, from advertising holdings, from hundreds of television channels. And we're penalizing them now for getting distracted. From what? Boring stuff at school, for the most part. It seems to me it's not a coincidence totally that the incidence of ADHD has risen in parallel with the growth of standardized testing. Now, these kids are being given Ritalin and Adderall and all manner of things, often quite dangerous drugs, to get them focused and calm them down. But according to this, attention deficit disorder.
So, and I'm not going to watch this entire thing, but it's also a means to make them more focused so that they will be what? Because it's for training you to be in the workplace, to follow the boss and just do what he says, instead of having critical thinking and thinking to yourself, well, why in the world do we have a system where we go into a totalitarian type of structure, an institution, and we spend 8 hours plus per day, and we don't have a democratic say in this area in our lives? And yet we talk about all manners of, oh, we should have more democracy. And yet we don't do that. So when you start to think critically, right, and outside of the box, that box being capitalism, then you start to go, wait, this isn't right. Now it makes you think, why in the world did Ronald Reagan create a financial barrier for public college? Why did he start, pushing for tuitions to be paid in college when he was governor of California? Because he doesn't want people to think critically, because that means that we would question this system even more. And now who runs our government? The parasite class. And part of our government is the school board, the departments of education. And they don't want us to think critically, because that thinking critically puts what at risk? Their power. So the thing is that this is one of the reasons why I think, and he gets deeper into this about why it's better that we should be acclimating to the way that kids learn, which I fully am on board with. And he said we shouldn't be anesthetizing children. We should be waking them up to what's inside them, and basically saying that, look, if you have a kid that learns better, either in small groups or alone, then we should acclimate our public education for that group of kids. You have some kids that learn better in the evening than they do in the morning. We should acclimate to that group of kids. We have some kids that learn, and why also, let me ask you this question. Why don't we have school that goes according to the biological circadian rhythm of kids going through puberty? Because as soon as puberty starts, guess what? Mornings are not good. Once 11, 12, 13 hits, guess what? You do not want to wake up anything before 11 a.m. Anybody got teenagers? They do. Look, give them a day off. You will not see them until 11, 12, 1 p.m. in the afternoon. Because biologically, their circadian rhythm is changing, because their bodies are changing. So therefore, why in the world don't we have high school starting at maybe at the earliest 10:30 in the morning? Because a lot of times the circadian rhythm, because of their hormone changes, keeps them up late. This is why some teenagers will be up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. But then we'll punish them for being up that late, because their circadian rhythm is changed. We'll punish them for something that's naturally occurring, instead of acclimating to the way kids learn, because we want them to be good little workers. That's why. And then guess what? They're tired, they're sleepy, their brains aren't even awake, and then we expect them to be able to pass a class. And also, I want you to take a look. What's their first period and second period class? And then look at their grades. And why are kids suddenly drinking coffee at 11, 12, 13, 14 years old? Why are they liking iced coffee so much now? Back in the day, coffee was an adult drink. We didn't drink no damn coffee. And now you got kids going, oh my God, I need my Starbucks. Why? That don't make no sense. Because we're trying to acclimate kids to be productive workers for who? Not for the rest of society. It's for the Peter Thiels and the Elon Musks and the Bill Gates and the Mark Zuckerbergs. That's who we're doing it for. It's not for us. It's not for the collective. This is why it's a class issue. Let's get back into this article, because I don't want us to get away from this affecting kids who are disabled. It says the legislator also created a new credential with students that disabilities that can earn after completing their work placement. These credentials or badges can be used to seek post-graduation employment, like I don't know, like a certificate of completion. It's like it's by any other name. God. It says in an additional statement after our story was published, Florida Department of Education wrote, they said it is important to clarify that Florida has expanded diploma pathways for students, including students with disabilities. With these pathways, Florida graduation rate for students reached 89.7% for the 23-24 school year and has increased year over year. Only 2% of students in this cohort receive a certificate of completion. Florida law provides multiple pathways to receive a standard diploma, ensuring students earn meaningful credentials upon completing high school. A standard diploma through traditional 24 credit option with supports and accommodations as needed. An academic and employment-based diploma option, which allows students to earn credit through combination of academic coursework and employment experiences. A standard diploma through alternate academic achievement standards and alternate assessment with modifications, supports, and accommodations, which is available for students with significant cognitive disabilities. And an 18 credit academically challenging curriculum to enhance learning pathways or excel, with a focus on core academic content areas. An 18 credit career and technical education graduation pathway for students to receive additional career preparation prior to graduation. In Florida, we are proud to be the education state and prioritize successful outcomes for all students, including students with disability. So my thing is, like, I'm hoping that I think that they should get a certificate of completion. But the thing is, like, look, if you're trying to vary the diploma so that there are different types of diplomas for those who have different, cognitive disabilities, I mean, okay. But at the same time, I just do not want any kids to fall through the cracks. And this ends up affecting them economically in the future, because it's not fair. It's not fair that they were born with an intellectual disability. So why should we push them to the margins for something that is out of their control? You see what I mean? That's my thing. And so I think that it's important that we continue to follow this, because as long as the system continues, it's never going to truly be beneficial towards these kids on a human level. Because within a system that values capital over people, when it values profits and property over people, the people always suffer. And this includes our students, and even more so those with intellectual disabilities. So when it comes to looking at the marginalized, just please continue to also have solidarity with our students that are marginalized in these areas too. because ultimately they grow up and they become part of the proletariat too. And if we are serious about solidarity with all workers, if we're serious about having solidarity with all people, this includes them too. And do what you can to see yourself within them. So then, yeah, they can also have liberation. All right, go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in for this segment. It's not the sexy segment that some people like to talk about. It's not. But I think it's deeply important, and I think it's deeply worthy of our attention. Because we can't just leave people who are, different from us out in the lurch. There was a school. I remember. I think it was on CBS this morning. This was years ago. I think it was a school out in Georgia, where the school classes would be held outside. Not all classes, but some classes would be held outside, and kids would do things like math class, like outside, like playing in the in the grass and the dirt, and learn counting and numbers and math, your fractions and all different types of things while they're outside. And the funny part is, because they're physically being active as well, this uses up that excess energy that kids typically have, especially boys. And then once that excess energy is used, guess what? They calm down, they focus. Because boys or adolescent males typically start to produce a lot of testosterone, and we need to expend that energy in order for us to go, okay, now we can focus. Problem is that why aren't we applying this biology as far as the way our brains work to our education systems? Why are we going by the same old factory model that they've had us go through in the 19th and 20th centuries? It doesn't make sense. Like, we know better, so we should be doing better. But doing better means, it has to benefit the parasite class. It can't be a public good that helps everybody outside the realm of making profit. It's what, it gets on my nerves. But I'm going to check on, see if we have any Rumble rants first, and then we will go into the Rockfin chat. Okay, so we're good. No Rumble rants right now. Let me check on the Rockfin. We're good on Rockfin. Okay, so we're going to go into the general chat, and then we shall do a little bit of house cleaning. All right, so let me see. Wow, got a lot of comments in here. Sean says, as someone who is on the spectrum, I would be pissed if come 2009, I was denied a diploma over this crap. Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, back in 2009, like, how many people, how were we tailoring and, detecting that someone is on the autism spectrum you know, how are we tailoring our lessons or curriculum and method of teaching so that they are able to learn, right? And not just retain the information, but apply it, use it, you know. If we don't do that, then we're really just expecting them. Are we really expecting them to really learn, right? I think that ultimately, when it comes to like, especially like a lot of kids who are on spectrum, it gets missed because we try to do education as a one size fits all, and it's not that way. You know, education is not a Vera Wang dress. It's like, oh, you don't adjust the Vera Wang to fit your body. You adjust your body to fit into a Vera Wang. You know what I mean? That's that whole like mentality when it comes to our public education system. It's like, no, 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 no. Because our brains are made a certain way and our brains differ in differing ways. So therefore, the education system should have different areas for different students. And this is also one of the reasons why public education should not be tied to any type of profit incentive, because then if it is tied to a profit incentive, then the kids who may need this particular type of class, if it's not receiving as much students and therefore it is at like financially like operating at a loss, well then a private institution or it being privatized, they would dump that into the kids who actually need it, even though it's not that many of them, they would lose out on that education. And so it's important that it stays public, right? But yeah, as far as kids who have autism, and also the detection of autism is overrepresented in young white males and is underrepresented in groups like Black females. Like, how many Black females do we know that have autism on the spectrum? I know Amanda Seals is on the spectrum, but how many of them are actually on the spectrum and are actually tested? Because a lot of times we'll just say, oh, well, they got an attitude, or that's just the way she is. When in reality, we don't have them tested for being on the spectrum. You know what I mean? Anyway, the Tidro says 99-1 is capitalism, bar none. Profit off of all else is the S show for the oligarchs that run it automatically for austerity, and why we are doing this. We should rise up together, not the cabal. Thank you very much for that. Robertson says the diploma and certificate of completion are meant to signify what an individual is capable of. You are doing a disservice to employers as well, who are trying to make informed hires. So here's my thing, right? If they have a certificate of completion, right, and that certificate of completion shows that they are able to do these specific areas, then why not that? Or are you saying, okay, hang on. Or you mean that by them taking away the certificate of completion, you're doing a disservice to employers as well who are trying to make informed hires? Maybe that's what you're talking about. Okay. I mean, that's a conversation, definitely. Marlo says, "Does anyone see my previous chat, or what the f this ish is crazy? Good morning, everyone." Oh, I'm sorry. I was a little busy. I couldn't. Jacqueline says, schools just focus on one type of intelligence when there are several types. And I've seen people with PhDs on the chase who have scored really badly on general knowledge. Yeah. Yeah. There are some educated fools out there. Like they can have a master's, a PhD, but then when it comes to street smarts, they would expire. You see. Yeah, basically, Achikario says they would consider you a failure to be discarded. Yeah. And you're literally talking about a life, right? That's the crazy part. Thomas says our free market that had to be bailed out by taxpayers. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. We can go off on that too. Feather says there is no free anything. No shit, Sherlock. There is no free anything, but it can be paid for through taxation and free at the point of service so that everybody benefits. It is a public good, right? Like, for instance, are the books at the library free? Technically, no, but they're free at the point of service where you can actually check it out and get it and read, and either for enjoyment or education, and therefore return it. And so then that's the thing. Like, for instance, like, I'm of the opinion that yes, public transportation, I should say, also should be operated the same. It should be paid for through taxation and free at the point of service. So that means when a bus or a train pulls up, I should be able to get on without having to put some money in a fare box or swipe a card. I feel the same way about healthcare. I feel the same way about utilities, including internet. I feel the same way about housing in a lot of ways, right? I feel the same way about basic food necessities. There's some things that I think that are non-negotiable, that I think that are public goods, because if you needed to survive, if you needed to live, it should be a public good. And it should be, we should pool our resources together like a society should, and then provide for everybody. Mao says, if you don't fit into the capitalist model, you're labeled neurodivergent now. Mm-hmm. Let me see. I'm trying to get to people who I haven't gotten to. Oh, ooh, okay. Wait. This person says, CX says, one of my favorite talks. Yeah, that was really good. I've been watching that for years. Changing Education Paradigms by Sir Ken Robinson is actually really great. Oh, let me put the link in the chat for y'all so you guys can finish watching it. It gets even better, actually, once you get past that halfway point, it gets even better. Okay. Yeah, Thomas says, sadly, nothing will make you a bigger pariah with Dems and Republicans than advocating for the poor. Yeah, it is definitely something that puts you there, Don says, nobody gets their food from a garden while in college. I'd almost bet on that. Maybe some hippie colleges. Are there hippie colleges? I mean, you can go to an agricultural school. I think FAMU also deals with agriculture. I don't know if they actually do all that, but and yeah, Tolson says, seriously, kids arriving at school before sunrise. I mean, look, as a kid in elementary school, yeah, I would be up at like 5 a.m. So me having to be in class by 8 a.m. In elementary school, that made sense. But why in the hell should I, if I am 14, 15, 16 years old, why, when my circadian rhythm is dictating to my brain that oh, guess what? You're going to sleep later and you're going to wake up later as well. Why? And that's happening to most of us. Why in the world are we forcing kids to have to wake up that early to go to high school when they're just waking up and their brains aren't even fully fired? The synapses aren't even fully firing. And then how many of those kids skip breakfast? Man, like, nah. Look, if it were up to me, high school would start at 11. And they would get out of school at 6. High school would be from 11 to 6. Yep. 11 to 6. People go, well, that wouldn't be practical because some kids need to be, they have to work and things like that. And I'm like, yeah, sure. All right. Well, you know what? They can work. But the thing is, like, the work hours would have to coincide with what you do at your job. But the primary work would take precedent, which is school. Right? I don't know, man. Good to see Zoya in the chat saying hit the like. Yes, absolutely. All right, so Champanda says they need to stop putting kids on mental health meds. We need to, I'm push back a little bit. We need to get out of a for-profit healthcare system, and the kids who absolutely do need to be on meds without a profit incentive from pharmaceuticals, then yes, of course, right? But if they can do it without it, but this would mean not having a for-profit healthcare system, then it's like, okay, well, are there other methods we can use in order to be able to do that? So I'm not against medication, but I don't want it to be overused as a means to make more profit for the parasite class. All right, so Brandy says, I work full-time as a grocery delivery driver, and it's the first job that has truly been accommodating to my disabilities. Clap it up for Brandy. Clap it up for Brandy. Absolutely. This is a win. And I'm glad that you're able to have that. And I think it's important that we also have, like, you may not be able to do every single job, but there are jobs that you can do. Like, I can't do every single job. What was I? I was a C student in high school. And I graduated. I walked across the stage. And guess what? What was my GPA? I think it was like a 2.8, maybe a 3.0, something like that. I was not the academic paragon that you see before you today. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, I was average. But the thing is, it's like, even still, there are certain jobs that I just can't do. And that's okay. Because I know what I can do and I'll go for it. Anyway. So I want to address something really quick before I move on. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, let's do a shout out to the patrons on Patreon. Because without you guys, this channel does not exist. You guys make it possible for us to be able to organize on the ground, do mutual aid on the ground, and push for a better system. while also at the same time informing all of you about what's going on in the world, as well as solutions that can be done in order for us to change the world and make it a better place. So I just want to give a big, huge thank you to all of you for constantly being here and showing not just your support, but also adding to the conversation and elevating it as viewers. And just thank you very much for continuing to support those of us here at RBN, because without you guys, RBN would not exist. And RBN is definitely a channel for the people. So thank you so very much for that. All right. House cleaning. Where do I start? Y'all gonna want to have to you guys might have to some of y'all might have to start screen recording and tagging somebody, because this person made a decision to come after one of our own on RBN. Kenneth, you decided to insult an RBN member for daring to critiquing and talking about the BS that some of your comrades that have done, and shilling people and trying to get them to stay within a party that doesn't give a damn about them. Oh, Kenneth, for you guys, yeah, his moniker that you guys know him as is Too Raw, Too Real. Yeah, that one. Kenneth, I'm going to share with you guys the photo, because I had to show you guys a screenshot, because Kenneth decided to block me from replying or quote tweeting. This is Kenneth. And all he said, because I can't see the quote tweet, he said, "Girl, get out of here looking like Barney the dinosaur." Now, of course, you know my sister Savvy Sabs, right? And this is in response. This is in response to the article that recently came out on Wired about a bunch of influencers who got paid up to $8,000 a month from different Democrat-linked dark money groups. And people like my sister Savvy Sabs and Nick reported on it. And now hit dogs are hollering because they're being called out. And here's the thing, Kenneth, instead of actually forming a reply that is mature, that is substantive, that actually addresses the accusations in the article and the critiques that my comrade Sabrina has given to you, you resorted to an infantile, sophomoric insult instead, meaning you have lost the argument already. In a battle of wits, Kenneth, you have come unarmed because you ain't got nothing, boo-boo. And so all you do is come out with an insult. Here's the thing. If you stop kissing the feet of the Democratic Party and actually start using that brain of yours and to say, I don't see anything concrete, tangible, substantive coming from them for us. By us, I mean, think about working class people, from gay black man to gay black man, those of us who are black, those of us who may be LGBTQ. I don't see him coming for the people who may be, I don't see them doing anything for people who may be women. Like, for instance, back in 2008, who said they would codify Roe v. Wade into law? Barack Obama. Who then said, well, it's not my highest legislative priority? In 2009, it was Barack Obama. So we all know that the Democratic Party doesn't care about women. So, and then also when it comes to substantively and tangibly, when we talk about the Democratic Party, when it comes to, for instance, our trans brethren, why in the world should they have to crowdfund in order to be able to have gender affirming care? They shouldn't. We should actually be like Cuba, where they actually get gender affirming care without having to pay a dime out of their pockets. And yet, you don't push the Democratic Party in that direction. You rather kiss up to Mama Kamala like a good little boy. And then when people call you and your group out on it, you're pressed. Why? Because my sister clocked you. That's what happened. I'm sorry. I'm getting a black gay ass moment right now. Look, my sister clocked you and you can't take it. She clocked you. She clocked your friends. She clocked all y'all. And guess what? Now y'all hollering and going, oh, well, no, the article's not accurate. This is you, Brian Tyler Cohen, David Pakman. Look, there's some people who I am suspecting that also may be getting money from Democrat dark money groups, like Pearl Mania. That's my suspicion. I don't know it for sure, but you know what? I'm gonna put him on that list. For me, I don't know if it's for sure, but I think so. But a lot of y'all are sitting here making money, and here's the problem. You're getting up all this angst, this anger, right? And you talk about the system, how bad it is. But then the same people who allowed the system to be so bad, you direct them back into their arms. And then guess what happens? They get let down again and again and again. That's like having a two-parent household where one parent is very physically abusive and the other parent just stands by and lets the abuse happen. And instead of taking the child out of the home, out of both parents, because one is doing the abuse and the other one's complicit in the abuse, you make the child stay in the home. You keep talking the child to stay there. And so now you are complicit because the Democratic Party led to a Trump presidency. And guess what? You're continuing that trend. But apparently you do not have the mental fortitude to create a viable argument against any of the accusations at all. All you do is act like some kid in elementary school and go, oh, you look like Barney. And watch, look, I want all of y'all screen record this session because we're calling him in. Screen record this and tag him and let him know that he done lost the argument just by posting this tweet. And why, oh why, did you refuse to allow me to reply? Because I know I see other people were able to reply. They can cool tweet, but I can't. See how it's great? Look, I want y'all to see it. This is me from my own account. It's all grayed out. Why is it grayed out here? It's grayed out because he doesn't want me to do it. Why? Because as far as identity goes, We on the same team, boo-boo. You can't accuse me of being homophobic. You can't accuse me of being anti-black. You can't accuse me of being transphobic, because guess what? I got solidarity with the dolls. But I also have solidarity with the working class, who some happen to be the dolls, who some happen to be the women, who some happen to be, well, all of us happen to be black. And the problem is, because you're pushing people into a party that doesn't give a damn about them, Kenneth, it appears you don't. And you'd rather insult somebody than give a real substantive critique and correct the record. Because, baby, you ain't got nothing to correct. Now, watch Kenneth come after me and insult me. And what is he going to go? He's going to go after what? Yeah, I know I need a haircut, so he can go after that, but I can always get a haircut tomorrow. What, is he going to come after my weight? Good luck with that, because I've been hearing fat jokes my entire life. There ain't nothing you can say that is different. What, are you going to talk about the gap in my teeth? Baby, I've lived with it, and guess what? People have told me it's cute, so you can't touch me there. Here's the thing, though. Address the accusations, address the critiques substantively. Don't walk away from it. Don't be a coward, Kenneth. Let people know. Like, if you feel like, oh my God, people are coming after my friends, well, guess what? Okay, tell your friends to truly address it. Look, if they want to, if you or your friends want to correct the record, look, my sister right here, her email is literally in all her videos on her channel. Email her, reach out, have the conversation. Why be a coward? But that's the thing. You got caught. Kenneth, also, how much money are you taking from Democrat dark money groups? Are you? Why are you so defensive? And so the thing is that you have to look at how people respond, because that tells you a lot about them. And so this is why I needed to address this. Because how dare you come after my comrade like that? How dare you? Did she insult you and your looks? I could very well do the same thing, because in private, I did, but I'm not going to do it publicly. Because I don't need to. Because we're all grassroots, baby. I'm grassroots. Go onto my Patreon. Look how much money I get. My spot fund, go ahead. It's pinned on my Twitter. Go ahead. You know how much I'm getting. I have nothing to hide. But apparently your friends do. So maybe you need to have a conversation with them instead of coming after people for critiquing. Because now you are making yourself and your friends look stupid. Too raw, too real. More like overcooked and fake. Anyway. All right, y'all. I had to get that out because, you know, my sister, nah, no, you're not coming after her like that. We stand by ours. All right, everybody, go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much. Let's move on to the final segment. Okay. So we already talked about how disabled students are constantly left behind, especially in this system. But I want to talk about mama and daddy and unc and auntie and grandma and papa. Got to talk about them because they are at risk. What if I told you that your parents or your grandparents are at even higher risk of being homeless? It's true. And it's quite unfortunate because in this capitalist system, we all know that our parents are just going through it, especially with the onset of inflation, what really is corporate greed that has been happening in this country. They didn't account for this when it comes to saving for retirement. And now you have a lot of our elderly in this country who we really should be taking better care of. And they are, for all intents and purposes, suffering. Many are becoming even more, they're losing even more as far as becoming homeless now. So I want to go into this story. Let me make sure I have it. Because it was a story that I was watching in regards to retirement. Make sure I have it here. And I was listening to it. I was listening to it while I was doing my workout the other day. Because it just attracted me and it made me think about this. So we're going to take a look at this, and then we're also going to get more into the nuts and bolts of our elderly becoming homeless. So this says why the U.S. retirement system gets a C+ rating. So let's get into this.
U.S. Social Security is facing insolvency by 2033.
If that trust fund runs short, benefits would have to be cut by around 20%.
At the same time, the U.S. retirement system received a C+ rating from the Mercer CFA Institute Global Pension Index in 2024.
The Netherlands actually took the top seed again in 2024. Australia was number 6 in our survey, but it's a C+, but that puts us middle of the pack. It means that the system is solid, designed well, but there is a significant risk. And if we don't clear that risk up, the system could be in some jeopardy.
Americans save dramatically more than in other countries.
But
the 401k system won't work. If Gen Z has some money in a retirement account, I will guarantee you that most of that money will be leaked out before retirement to buy a healthcare policy, to deal with an emergency room, to maybe buy a house, which is good, but that money won't be there for retirement, or all the other kind of life contingencies that happen, over that 40 years that you're working.
So here it's just in the intro, they're saying that we save more, right? But who got money in their savings? Who got money? By the way, take the poll, please. Take the poll. Because who got money in their savings? Those of us who are millennials, I am curious. Y'all got a savings account? What is a savings? Because I guarantee you, baby, a lot of us ain't got diddly squat in that savings account. Because when you're living paycheck to paycheck, you have no savings because that savings gets depleted. You take money out of your savings, and guess what? Your savings goes back to zero. So when it comes to retirement, millennials, we're cooked. Also, are Gen X saving? Do they even have anything? Because after boomers, Gen X is next. And Gen X is a smaller, I think Gen X is a smaller population. I don't know why. I feel like Gen X is a little bit smaller population than millennials. Let's continue on, guys.
Countries around the world are raising their retirement ages as well as requiring mandatory contributions into personal retirement savings. Experts suggest this can help address modern problems, like people living longer and fewer workers paying into the system. Here's how the US retirement system compares to the rest of the world, and what experts think it can do to improve. Let's consider some of the features that are often present in the A-grade systems. They are a net replacement rate, including both public and private pensions, of at least 65% for a median income earner with a full career. Private pension coverage of at least 80% of the working age population. Pension contributions that are being invested for the future of at least 12% of wages. And a well-governed and well-regulated private pension system.
I think is important to highlight the Netherlands that's in the top all the time. They have just passed rules in the last couple of years. They're moving from a defined benefit arrangement to a defined contribution.
A defined contribution plan, such as a 401k in the United States, works a little bit like a bucket. Workers decide how much to put in, how to invest it, and in some cases, employers add to the bucket as well. In the United States, participation in these plans is voluntary, and workers typically must choose to opt in. Usually, they can access all of the money upon retirement. A defined benefit plan, however, resembles a faucet. Workers pay into programs such as Social Security or employer-sponsored pensions and receive a steady monthly payment upon retirement, typically for life. The benefit plan provider sets the contribution amount and how the money is invested.
In the Netherlands, there's a mandatory contribution made. You can't opt out of it, either as an employer or an employee. So getting money in the US is a real challenge because it is a voluntary system. But if we're going to stay voluntary, then getting it easier to launch a plan and join a plan is the critical thing for us to focus on.
So here's my question. Now hear me out. If housing was guaranteed, if healthcare was guaranteed, if transportation was free at the point of service, if utilities were free at the point of service, you follow me here? If, at the very least, if you couldn't afford food, you can get a stipend for healthy food, right? Just by being unemployed. Or if you're elderly, people would make sure that you have food continuously in your household. If all the basic necessities to live is provided for, when it comes to trying to save for retirement, the only thing you would really need is money for more recreational things that you want to do when you retire. I don't see the need to have a retirement if all your basic needs are already met. Retirement should be for just extras if you want to have that. I don't think we even should have to save for retirement like that. This is also one of the reasons why, and Roger, I know you're watching, we should have things like public banks so that we can have government subsidized housing for seniors. If you are a senior and you don't own your own home, then you should be able to get government subsidized housing for yourself. You should be able to get an apartment for you and your spouse or your significant other. And you guys can live in that. And then on top of it, we talked about this last week. Also, seniors should, if you do own your home, I personally think that once your house is completely paid off, then you should owe no more in property tax. If you, especially if you're a senior, if your house is completely paid off, no more property tax. Tax on what? Right? But I think that there should be a huge push to make sure we focus on taking care of our elderly. Because they are the guides. They are the sages that could tell us how things were back then so that we could have a more personalized lesson of history taught to us. Like, the elderly should be revered in such a way where we make sure that we want them around as long as possible. I don't see why we have to have retirement like that. Maybe am I sounding illogical or too radical? Maybe, but I just feel like they shouldn't have to struggle to just try to get a retirement. And the retirement is really for what? Basic necessities in your elderly years. They should be provided anyway. Right? And am I crazy? They should just have it. Like, for instance, my mom is 74. She should have completely, free at the point of service housing, utilities, water. If she wants to go back to school and get educated in something, she could do that. I honestly think that, it's like, duh, like, why not? There was a video. I'll try to find it. But it was a video out of China and how they are providing college for elderly. No kidding. It is amazing. But I'll find it and we'll show that as well. But let's continue on.
The Netherlands is not alone in requiring people to save.
I've worked in a number of countries, including Chile and Australia. Both of those have national mandatory defined contribution plans. Both of the systems, I think, have worked fairly well in being able to help people get in early, invest, and save toward retirement.
The thing that I like about Australia is that everyone's covered. it's hard to beat the everyone's covered provisions. They shifted from largely a defined benefit system to a defined contribution years ago. And so when they did that, the employers were happy to go to a defined contribution. And so the fact that they had mandatory contributions, and the way they did it actually was slow. They started out at a low mandatory employer contribution, and then they've risen over time.
Not everyone agrees with the Mercer CFA assessment.
Mercer is a pension consultant firm. They care about these little details of how retirement plans work. For instance, they penalize the US because you're not required to buy an annuity with your retirement savings. They penalize the US because we allow pre-retirement withdrawals and loans. All of that is fine. What they don't account for is Americans save dramatically more for retirement than do people in the typical developed country. Retirement plan assets in the US are 2.5 times the median of OECD countries, which means even if we have these picayune faults with our program, we're saving much, much more for retirement.
Hang on. I want to say this because there's something that they're dancing around, but they just have not hit it, and they don't hit it in this video. Things are way more expensive than anticipated, so therefore elderly people are depleting their retirement funds a lot faster and in greater amounts than they actually anticipated they would. Therefore, the retirement doesn't go far enough. Why? Because the corporate parasites, the parasite class, are so greedy that they are literally depleting the retirements of boomers now, to the point where a lot of them are now starting to struggle and become homeless. Some of them are trying to go back to work at their 70s and 80 years of life, and they can barely survive. And so this is where we're at now, where retirement is now going to be seen as a distant memory. Because what do when, let's say, you set out to retire and you gain a 401k, and by the time you retire, it's like $2 million, right? $2 million. And you're 65. So you retire with $2 million in the account. In order to live a somewhat, and let's say you own your home, right, in the United States. You still have to pay utilities. You still have to pay property taxes, right? You still have to pay for food. You still have to pay for transportation, fuel, you still have to pay for a lot of these things, right? Will that money still be there between 65 and 90? Is 25 years. Is that 25 years going to, is that $2 million enough to cover you for 25 years? Because how many of us wish we had the cost of living that we had back in 2000? You remember how much a dozen eggs was back in 2000? Dozen eggs was what? I think on the high side, it was like $1.20 for like a dozen eggs back in 2000. It may have been cheaper than that. You might have been able to get 99 cents for a dozen eggs in 2000. But see how our money went? And our money actually went longer. Yeah, we made less, but our money also went longer. Right? I'm just doing the math pretty quick. So $2 million for 25 years is $80,000, right? $80,000 a year works right now. Right now, it works. And it might work until about 2035. But then it's probably going to go up to about $90,000 to $100,000. You'll need to actually have a decent standard of living, right? Are you going to be able to do that? And how many people have saved that much? How many people have $2 million in their retirement account now? How many boomers that are just now, actually, it's not even boomers. Wait, when is boomer end? I think it was 1965, right? Boomers are basically up until 1965. So 1965, that would make you, wow. That'll make you 60 years old now. If you were born in 65. That means in 5 years, by 2030, you'll be retirement age. That means that's Gen X. How many Gen Xers that'll be hitting 65 by 2030 will have $2 million in retirement ready to go the moment they retire? How many of them? I'm very doubtful that there's going to be a lot. Have you tried to live off $40,000 a year in this economy? That's if you have $1 million in retirement. And if you expect to live to 90, let's just say 20 years, if you expect to live till 85. And so the problem is that a lot of people aren't able to save for retirement because inflation, or really in reality, corporate greed, is depleting their funds.
Other experts argue just looking at averages can be misleading.
The median level of retirement savings for baby boomers is 0, meaning most people have nothing. And if you just take the average, you take in the people who have a couple of $1 million. So we have the boomers moving into retirement, 5% have the amount of money they need.
For the US system, the thing that could change that grade significantly, the most important is actually coverage. Our 401k plans are voluntary.
A 401k is a workplace retirement savings plan in the US that allows employees to set aside part of their paycheck into accounts that are invested in assets such as stocks and bonds.
Hang on. Did you guys catch that she said only 5% of boomers have what they need for retirement? Y'all catch that? 5%. That means 95% of baby boomers do not have enough for retirement. That is scary. 95% of baby boomers do not have enough for retirement. And by the way, back in the day, we didn't have 401ks. We had pension plans. But now they got away with that because the corporations wanted more money, so they got rid of the pension plans. Now you're stuck with a 401k, which is subject to the markets. And who owns 80% of the stock markets? The 1%. So they're tying their wealth and greed to your ability to retire. It's sick. And so I wanted to share that because this is what's going on with our elderly. And more of our elderly now, more than ever, are becoming homeless because even if they save for retirement, they just don't have it. And then how many people are going to hire somebody who's above the age of 65? How many? They're not going to hire somebody like that. They're going to hire somebody that's younger. So let's get into this. This is Invisible People, and they focus a lot on the unhoused. So it says the effect of homelessness on elderly people. All right. So let's get into this. It says, how does homelessness impact seniors? It says homelessness is always traumatic, but for older adults, the physical and emotional toll of aging magnifies the challenges of life without stable shelter. Aging is something we all face. One day, we'll each need a helping hand, someone to show us grace when we fall behind on bills, help us navigate stairs, carry our groceries, or patiently explain a confusing medical bill. But for too many seniors, that day comes without a home to fall back on. A single crisis, job loss, serious illness, or death of a spouse can spiral into homelessness later in life. And once someone becomes homeless in old age, the path to recovery is steep and often impassable. Older adults experiencing homelessness face disproportionately high rates of chronic health conditions like diabetes and hypertension. Preventative care is often out of reach due to lack of insurance or money. When conditions go undiagnosed and untreated, they worsen. Physical stress from sleeping on the streets or in cars raises cortisol levels, blood pressures, and emotional distress. The effects are cumulative and deadly. So, and what are some of these things that pay for these services? Retirement accounts. And if you can't save enough for retirement, then guess what? You're subject to this. And this is why homelessness is going up. It is bad. And this is why mama, daddy, grandma, pop, they are suffering under this system. It's not just us, those are in our working ages. It is also our parents and grandparents, and maybe even great grandparents for some of you who are younger, that are you have those families that are suffering because they just don't have it. Why? Because the conditions are unsustainable. It says hunger and health go hand in hand. Nutrition is another barrier. Food insecurity often forces older homeless individuals to rely on low-cost, low-nutrient options high in sugar, salt, and fat. Access to fresh produce and lean proteins is rare. While food banks and donations are well-meaning, meals are often canned or processed. That's why it's vital for meal programs and shelters to prioritize fresh, nutrient-dense foods. Barriers to care and connection. Trust in healthcare providers can also be an issue. Many older people feel unheard or overlooked during appointments, which leads to reluctance in seeking care. Physical limitations can make traveling to appointments or navigating public assistance programs nearly impossible. And once inside, long and complicated application processes can discourage even the most determined. Let's break this down. So, would we have this problem if we had a nationalized healthcare system? No, we wouldn't. We would not have this problem if we had a nationalized healthcare system. All right, let's break it down even further. Many older people feel unheard or overlooked during appointments, which leads to reluctance in seeking care. Some of these places operate as for-profit. So therefore, if you have a for-profit hospital, clinic, dialysis center, you have a for-profit, physical therapy, all these different places. If you have a for-profit, and guess what? Time is money. They're not going to have time to listen to you. They're not going to have time to take time in order to hear you out and help you to understand. This is why a for-profit healthcare system is not conducive for human survival. Right? Let's look at this. Physical limitations can make traveling to appointments and navigating public assistance programs nearly impossible. What did I say about public transportation? Free at the point of service? Did you know that ambulatory paratransit is also public transportation? Meaning that, for instance, paratransit programs, which I used for almost 18 years, is public transportation. But In order for me to be able to use it, I would have to come up with a copay to get to and from my treatments. Some older people, they ain't got it. They don't. And so that's what makes it tough too. And so to be able to get to where they need to go, who's going to take them? Some people don't have transportation, or some people may not have the time. And then says, and once inside, long and complicated application processes can discourage even the most determined. You know what makes the application process even more arduous? Having to figure out the insurance process. And if we had a nationalized healthcare system, there would be no insurance. Therefore, just like what John Q said in the movie, sick, help. Sick, help. There wouldn't be a barrier. They wouldn't have to try to figure out, oh, how are you going to pay for this? Because it's already done. All they would need is your ID. There wouldn't be a need for trying to figure out insurance information. And this is some of the ways in which we could actually alleviate that, but we don't. Let's continue on here. It says self-care and hygiene also suffer increasing risk of infections. Social isolation and the daily grind of survival take a toll on mental health, and the long-term impact is sobering. Homelessness accelerates aging. The average age of death for a homeless person in the United States is around 50, decades earlier than the general population. Homeless people are also 16 times more likely to die suddenly of a heart attack. These are not just statistics, they're warnings, and any one of us can face homelessness and later in life. Preventing senior homelessness requires more than housing. It requires dignity, compassion, and a community willing to care for those aging without a safety net. And then this gets into the social relationships and then safety nets. But this is one of the things as to why it is so important that we need to take care of our elderly. Because you, if you're lucky, will make it to being elderly too. Because either one or two things is going to happen, baby. Either you're going to become elderly or you're going to die. One or two is going to happen. I'd rather you become elderly, but while becoming elderly, you also have a life of dignity set up in place for you to age gracefully. But this system doesn't want you to do that, because to them, your value goes down. So therefore, you're considered less valuable the older you are. I want to share something with you guys too as well. And this is out of Market Watch. More baby boomers are becoming homeless. It just takes one crisis to push someone onto the streets. This was 2 years ago. I remember talking about this, and it's happening. Are you kidding me? Did they paywall me? Oh, Jesus. All right. Thank goodness there are workarounds for this. My apologies, folks. I got paywalled. Okay. Got it here. And please make sure to take the poll. All right. So it says people age 65 and older are the fastest growing group of people who are unhoused. People age 65 and older are fastest growing people who are homeless, and their ranks will peak by 2030 in 5 years. This daunting forecast comes amid escalating rents nationally, stubborn inflation, and potential recession that compounds woes for baby boomers who have minimal savings for retirement. Remember what I said, 95% of them do not have enough for retirement. It also comes as the traditional workplace pensions are increasingly rare, and workers must rely on the savings they have accumulated through their working lives. About 27% of people who are 59 or older have no retirement savings. So over a quarter of people who are over the age of 59 have none. They ain't got nothing. According to a 2019 study by the University of Pennsylvania and others that analyzed the populations of homeless shelters in New York City, Los Angeles, and Boston, that predicted by 2030 the number of people 65 and older who are unhoused will nearly triple compared to 2017. University of Pennsylvania professor Dennis Colhane says the significant growth, especially in those 65 and over, will continue nationwide through 2030. So it just takes one crisis to push someone who is rent burdened into the streets. Many older homeless adults are newly unhoused. And so Margaret Cushnell, the director of University of California, San Francisco Center for Vulnerable Populations, said nearly half of single adults 50 and over are experiencing homelessness and have never been unhoused from before age 50. First, being homeless after 50 looks very different than lifelong homelessness. It's hard in your 50s and 60s getting back into the workforce anyway. But add in that these are low-wage, physically demanding jobs, often that these people had, and they can't physically do anymore. Says those who are first homeless after 50 tend to stay unhoused until, and they tend to die faster than those who have experienced homelessness throughout their lives. Says that homeless seniors often use acute healthcare services and die prematurely. Homeless seniors often use costly acute healthcare services and die prematurely. The Journal of the American Medical Association study found unhoused people over 50 years died at a rate of 3.5 times greater than their housed counterparts. According to the note to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, there are only 36 affordable and available rental homes for every 100 extremely low income renter households nationally. It says homelessness service groups are maxed out in their ability to help those homeless after 50 and may not have the substance use or mental health programs or of other adults who may get services faster because of other issues. These are older neighbors and caregivers and preschool teachers and landscapers who have exhausted their ability to work and they're at risk. It's important we not distance ourselves from people who contributed to and built our communities, and now they need help to stay in that community. We are all aging. And it's just like what I talked about before. The homelessness population in Orlando has jumped in 3 years. And by jump, that's an understatement. It has increased 156% since 2022. 156% increase in homelessness. How many of those are seniors? How many of those are your mama, your daddy, your grandma, your grandpa? How many of them? And this is why this system needs to change. Imagine your mom or your dad out there in the streets. Imagine your grandma, your grandpa out in these streets. People passing them by as if they're invisible. Their bodies slowly deteriorating and withering away because they don't have enough nutrition. They have no place to stay away from the elements. Their health is fading fast because as soon as they go into a hospital, people They just want to treat them for whatever slight thing that they may have and then put them back out in the street. We need a system of dignity, a system of grace. Problem is, we don't have it because that system has to be built by us. We can't wait for another group of people to do it. Can't wait even for politicians to do it. I want to give a shout out to Roger Meadows for this because he sent me this as well. I just want to take a look at this. As map U.S. poverty rates by state. Poverty rates, a 3-year average. This is from 2021 to 2023. I live in Florida, so let's take a look here. So it goes from 6% to 20%. In Florida, it is 12.5% right now. Highest is Louisiana with 18.9%, and in New Mexico is 18.5%. Washington, D.C. is 13.4%. The lowest is actually Utah. And look at Vermont with 7.7. So this is how bad it is. Number of people in poverty. Just look at these numbers. Louisiana is the top with 853,000 people living in poverty. New Mexico, 388,000. Mississippi, 501,000. Arkansas is 473,000. Kentucky is 699,000. So if you look at it, there's millions of us. So many more living in poverty than there are people who are wealthy. And so I think it's important that we focus on changing the system, not just for our young people, but we also have to keep our older people in mind. Because we want those golden years to be golden. And we don't want them to see them miss out. Because we want that to happen to us. Let's take care of our elderly. All right, thank you very much. Go ahead and give a like to the stream. I'm going to check. And Roger, I saw your super chat. I will check the DM. Let me check right now see if we have any Rumble rants. No. Okay. Okay, I do see a comment in Rockman, but you probably have a lot more than that. Okay. Let's do this. And hold on. I was going to be looking for this particular video I saw. I don't know if I wanted to share it on here, but for the stream, but I don't know if I'll be able to. But there was a video that I saw that I thought was amazing. And if I can find it really quickly, then I will share it. I wonder. Man. It was a really good one. And it basically shows like real dignity being done for the elderly. And it's something that I would love to see more of, especially if we can have that in this country. Oh man. Let me see. And then if not, it's okay. I'll see if I can find it and retweet it. I think it was shared either by Carl Jha or Jason Smith. It was one of them that shared it. It was awesome. I don't think I'll be able to find it. I'm sorry, guys. It was such a good one. Oh well. But I'll make sure to share it on Twitter if you guys follow me on Twitter. I'm gonna look for it because I really want you guys to see it. Anywho, all right. So let me go into the. Let me just check here. Hmm. Um. Okay. So thank you very much for this, Roger. I'll just share this really quick. This is our U.S. News and World Report. These are the 10 states with the most homeless people. You have California, New York, Washington, Florida's number 4. Massachusetts, where Sabby is number 5. Then Texas, Illinois, Oregon, Colorado, and Arizona. It says California alone counted for 24% of all homelessness in America, based on the 2024 estimates, yet standardized by population. The states with the highest rates of homelessness were Hawaii, New York, Oregon, Vermont, Washington, D.C. had the same rate as Hawaii and New York. Yeah, so it's bad out there. It's let me see here. Yeah, I gotta get going. I'm running long. Says let me see.
Canadians in 2024. So
says California, New York, and Florida consistent rankly among those states with the highest raw numbers of homeless people. According to the 2024 and 2025 estimates, California had the largest population with 1,080. 1,000. I'm sorry. Read James, 187,084. Followed by New York with 158,019, and Florida with 31,362. These figures represent the total number of individuals experiencing homelessness, with factors like high housing costs and these more populous states contributing to large populations. Here's a breakdown of states with the highest numbers. So you have California, New York, Florida, Washington, and Massachusetts. California and New York are, 187,000, 158,000 respectively. Florida is 31,000. Over 31,000. Washington is over 31,000, and Massachusetts 29,000, over 29,000. High population, high housing costs. The states with higher populations and more expensive housing markets, like California and New York, tend to have higher absolute numbers of homeless people. The complex causes are, while housing affordability is a major factor, other complex issues like substance abuse and health problems also contribute to homelessness in these states. And the regional impact is these states account for a significant portion of the total homeless population in the U.S., with over 315,000 people experiencing homelessness across 3 states combined. That's a lot, Roger. That is crazy, man. And yeah, Florida is number 3 on the list. And says there isn't a precise number for just empty condos, but Florida has over 1.6 million vacant housing units overall, the highest in the nation, a figure that includes condos. Factors contributing to this include investor activity and significant real estate appreciation. More recently, new condo safety laws requiring mostly repairs are forcing many owners to sell, increasing inventory and potentially contributing to a rise in vacant condos. So Florida has the most vacant houses in the U.S. with 1.7 million. Let me see, investors, speculator activity. A significant number of these vacant properties are owned by domestic and international investors and speculators who buy homes and condos to profit from appreciation. Increased supply of condos. A spike in condo inventory is occurring due to new state laws. and after 2021 Surfside collapse, which mandate safety inspections and costly renovations for buildings over 30 years old. I think I remember that. I think that was in Miami. It's like half the building like collapsed. Market impact says the increased supply, along with cautious buyers concerned about raising HOA fees and building costs, is creating surplus condos on the market. Yeah, fuck HOAs. Oh my gosh, I cannot stand them. It says new study found that 1.7 million homes vacant in Florida. So what I'll do is I'll take a look at that. And yeah, I could definitely talk about that, about what's happening in Florida. And he says, James, I thought that was just me. You just revealed the scientific explanation as to why I would go to bed late in high school and couldn't fall asleep. I was a CD student, maybe B. Why? Because of sleep deprivation. As we went up in grades, we had to get up earlier and earlier. And first through fourth grade, 8 a.m., fifth grade, 7:30 a.m., sixth grade, 7 a.m., junior high school, 6:30 a.m. By the time we got to high school, we had to be up at 6 a.m. Now, here's the thing, Roger, as far as having to go to school earlier. So here's the thing. There was a book that I was reading, and it's quite interesting. It's called The Power of When. I forget the name of the author, but he actually is a sleep study specialist. And one of the things that he talked about is when you go through puberty, your circadian rhythm actually shifts when your hormones change as your body's developing. And so this is why a lot of teenagers actually end up sleeping in later, because they end up they actually go to sleep later and they wake up later because their circadian rhythm and going through puberty is changing their bodies. And so they may, when they used to go to bed at like 10, maybe 11, now they're staying up till like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. But they're waking up on the weekends at like 11, maybe 12, right? They're not waking up early like they used to because that circadian rhythm. So it may not necessarily be the amount of sleep that they're getting, but just when they're getting it. So it just shifts. So they still may be getting that 8 hours naturally, but it shifts from being earlier times to later times. The problem is that we know this, but yet the school systems do not acclimate according to the biology, typically, of teenagers. So therefore, and that's because they want them to condition them to be good little workers instead of being critical thinkers. And so because of that, then you have a whole bunch of sleep deprived kids in school. I guarantee you, GPAs would actually uptick a little bit if we actually change school times to accommodate the circadian rhythms of students. In fact, I think the earliest students should be elementary school. Then after them, middle school, then the latest one should be high school. It should go in that order because it literally goes according to the natural circadian rhythm of them. Because look, my nephew, if you gave him the ability, by the time he hit 13, 14, if you gave him the ability to sleep until 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he would. But then you could wake up. I could go to bed at like 10 p.m. I could wake up at 2 a.m. Homeboy's still up. And it's not because he's being defiant. It's because biologically his body's changing, so he has to be up. And so instead of punishing or yelling at them, realize that their body's changing in that way. And so schools should acclimate to that too. But they don't. Right? But yeah, it's crazy, man. So it wasn't you, it was the system. He said, I stopped eating breakfast when I got to junior high. And yeah, and some people they stop. And sometimes it's because like you don't have time to really, eat breakfast. And so you skip and then you start getting used to it. Oh, this should be interesting. You already caught me with the first sentence. I think I'm going to like this one. He says, here's another reason why 401k is a scam. Understand its origins. Hang on. Just making sure. Zoya, if you're listening, are we meeting today? I just want to make sure. Because I just looked at the time. It says it has a way for the boss class to get out from under having to be responsible for your pension. The way companies used to get around it is that they would file for bankruptcy, change their name or merge or whatever. That would happen is the federal government via the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, PBGC, will come in and pick up what's owed to retirees for what the corporations, if they want out of business or whatever the case is at the time. 401k came out to shift the burden away from employers and attach it to stock market. To say they went to stock market does well, your pension is going to improve. That was right before they started deregulating the predatory speculative economy. Remember Enron? Yep. When all those people lost their 401k retirement, yes, Gen X gets overlooked because there are less of us than boomers and millennials. Yep, I was right. He says, I just got a new job where I'm in the middle of my third worker. This after I get out of debt with my landlord, who I'm behind a year in back rent, and with the person who I rent this car from. And once I get out of all this other debt that I owe, I should be able to start next year, hopefully with a hope and a prayer and fingers crossed, we'll be able to start saving $500 weekly minimum. I'm hoping for you, Roger. I'm pulling for you, man, because you've been through it. You have really been through it. It says remove housing from predatory speculative marketing, decommodifying it. It says I'm doing a speech to text, so-called typos, single payer healthcare. The problem, when I want you to understand, James, is that the reason why the government does not want to do it is because it's really a shifting of the cost from individuals to the government. And once the government has the responsibility of covering everybody, figure out how to do it. This is the reason why I say it can't just be single payer healthcare, but also has to be removing hospitals, dialysis centers, rehab centers, nursing homes, and other type of medical facility from the predatory speculative market, and create a research and development state agency to discover new pharmaceuticals that can compete with the industry at a lower price, open to delving into alternative medicine as well. Remove private health insurance from the speculative market. These things open to door to single payer healthcare being the next thing. By the way, I see the reason for Florida homeless rates and all this stuff as it pertains to Florida today. That's the stuff I was talking about for Tuesday. Oh, okay. Those videos in regards to your governor, you can say for Tuesday's show. I got fired from a lot of jobs in my late teens and early mid-20s because of that same reason. Okay. So I have to get going. And let me check to see if there's any see, Origami says, when are we going to admit that we are a colony of Israel? The thing is, we're not a colony of Israel. And Israel is really just a U.S. military outpost. But in reality, it's not that Israel controls the United States, and it's not that the United States controls Israel. It's that the parasite class controls both. The thing is like the parasite class needs Israel because of the resources that is surrounding it. And then the United States, in the corporate parasites, need the United States in order to inject this hegemony across the world, because that hegemony involves the power of the corporate autocracy to basically dominate over the world, thus making everybody its slaves. So yeah. Yes, I am tired. I worked out earlier today, and I had to rush to make sure I was on time for the show, which I was not. So yeah. And then Roger says, crazy what's happening in Florida with the housing market. Absolutely. Thank you for this. And he says, my rock ain't going through. Check DM. Thank you so very much. And then this last one, Truth Sensei says, SMUD Freedom Flotilla Convoy set sail earlier today. All eyes on Samud. Crew includes Greta Thunberg and Greg Stoker. Oh, Greg's on there? Oh, snap. Okay, that's going to be interesting. Oh, my gosh. Okay. And Roger, I'm sorry. I can't I don't have time to go into the sorry. I don't have time to go into this one at this video that you sent on Rockfin. My apologies. I am running very late. I'm supposed to be at a meeting right now. But guys, I will see you guys on Tuesday. I don't think I'll just be doing. Yeah, I'll just be doing a quick. I'll be doing some news stories on Tuesday, so you guys can be prepared for that. And so, guys, thank you so very much for tuning in. Water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Do all the things if you got them. Love you guys for watching. Forehead kisses. I'll see you guys in the next. Oh, wait. I forgot the poll. The poll. Sorry. Let me see the poll. And let me share the screen before I go. Woo. So y'all gonna get a second set of forehead kisses for that one. All right. It says, are your parents struggling economically? 37% said yes. 36% said no. 22% said my parents aren't alive. And then 4% says I don't know, no contact. So that's out of 89 votes. So yeah, a lot of people have struggling economic parents that are struggling economically that are elderly. So it's a lot, man. Anyways, take care, everybody. Thank you so very much for watching. Second forehead kisses for you, because that's the kind of guy I am. Y'all have yourself a